Welcome back to Rock Guitar Confidential with Scott and Ryan. Hey, are you ready to revisit the trauma of your parents finding all of your guitar magazines under your bed? God, what did you tell them? Well, today we're going to revisit it, and we're also going to talk about recording. Thanks for listening.
It's so cool that you dig into it. Can you dig it?
Not only can I dig in, I can lean into it, as Mr. Big taught me.
Yep, that's exactly right. Colorado Bulldog, baby.
Hey, man.
Actually, I'm sorry. That's not leaning into it. That is on. That's the next record. That was the one that came after that, which I can't remember now. That had Green Tin and 60s.
Oh, dude, what a great tapping exercise.
That was a great record.
Yeah.
You know, there's like a lot of really cool stuff. What the heck? Oh, Bump Ahead. Bump Ahead's the one I'm thinking of.
That's right.
Colorado Bulldog. Yep. That's a great band. I mean, that they actually, you know, it doesn't love, I don't think, for that time period. They almost are kind of outside of Japan, of course. In Japan, they've never been.
Once again. Yeah.
But
Thank you, Japan.
In the United States, though, I mean, they're kind of known for the one song. You know what I mean? It's kind of like them and Extreme are in that same bucket together. That, to a much lesser extent, Saigon Kick, because Saigon Kick had the same thing. Like, you know, everybody kind of
on the way.
Everybody kind of fell into that acoustic ballad trap in like '91.
Dude, you know? Once the stools come out on stage, I'm out.
You know, this is just more relatable, man. You shouldn't have all these crazy shredding solos between you and the bass player. It should just be strumming some chords and a nice little happy Beatlesy kind of. Hey, it worked for him. I mean, you could argue that More Than Words and To Be With You and Love Is On The Way are the reason those guys are still commercially viable today and still tour. You know what I mean? It's, you know, at least in parts of the world. In Japan, they've always appreciated what Mr. Big did. It wasn't like that ever really went away.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like, I don't know how to not appreciate that band. Great musicians, great songs.
You know, I've said it before. I'll say it again. They like being good at stuff in Japan.
It's true. They don't like, mediocrity is not a huge positive thing there. You know what I mean? It's like, hey, look at how average I am. It's like, no thanks. You know?
Exactly.
All right. Anyway, guys, hey, thank you for listening. This is the Rock Guitar Confidential podcast with Scott and
Ryan.
And we're so glad to have you here today. And we are going to be talking about some really interesting stuff today. We're going to do part 2 of our guitar crushes. This is going to be bringing us all the way up to the modern day. And then we're going to talk a little bit about how to get into recording. We've both had students recently ask us questions about what kind of gear they would need and, you know, places to kind of start, and also some of our experience with recording our upcoming Ex Aegis album, which is going to be dropping here in the fall of 2022. Ryan, what do you think about that, man?
Man, so where to begin? Current guitar crushes.
Okay, this is going to be boring because I'm a very much a one-woman kind of man and a one-guitar kind of man. So my guitar crush is, okay, I'll just put this out there on the record. This is sort of like, you know, what they call a hall pass, right?
Uh-huh.
My fidelity is 100% the VGA guitars. All my main guitars are VGAs. I love those things to death. And
great guitars.
The best guitars you can get, really. But if I was to step out on them for, say, a hall pass one day.
Okay, well, do you get a hall pass? Should you contact VGA first?
No, I'm not going to. I'll just assume that I'm just going to assume they're not going to hear this, because I'll tell you right now,
the endorsement
just to get this out of the way, the VGA guitars are the best guitars you can buy. There's no two ways. I'm not just saying that because they've got a chip implanted in my brain. It's because
that's so cyberpunk.
They are the best guitars you can get. But there's a couple other companies that I really dig as far as I think are pretty cool.
That are just like 0.001% less awesome.
Well, I mean, it's almost like, you know, you can't write, but there's a lot of other good guitars. So the ones the two that come to my mind off the bat are the new Sur guitars. There's actually the Sur Modern. I really like that guitar a lot, and it's actually very similar to my VGA, except it doesn't have the carbon fiber in the neck, which is obviously way better. But
tell us all about the carbon fiber in the neck there, Scott.
It's 10% carbon fiber. So what that means?
Does it have a truss rod?
It does not.
That's
and because it has no truss rod, that means the neck cannot move. So the neck is going to be always stable no matter what, which means it could be, you know, super humid, it could be super arid. The neck will never move, which means your tuning stability is perfect on that guitar always. So when you look, and it doesn't really affect the tone. People will say, "Oh, well, it makes a tone." It doesn't, because it's only 10% of the neck material is carbon fiber.
Now, if someone like put a Bigsby on a VJ, would it stay in tune?
I wouldn't know, because it should go straight into the garbage if that ever happened.
That's a great question. Is the VJ guitar built so well that it'll tune even with a Bigsby on it?
The only guitars that I really think are the best are the VGAs, and they've got a few things they've done that have really solved a lot of problems. One is the carbon fiber on the neck. They have a hardened 0 fret, which means the playability from fret 1 to fret 24 is perfect. They've got stainless steel frets. They have ball bearing mounted tremolos, which means there's no knife edges to wear out. It's incredibly smooth and it will last forever. But they're the only manufacturers who do that. Now, a company like Sir, let's say, those guys make amazing versions of Fender guitars. They basically make the best Fender guitar that Fender doesn't make.
Kind of like Friedman.
It's very similar. So but they make the highest quality of everything you can get your hands on, and they're great and they play great. And they're well made. They just don't solve all the problems. They kind of take an old technology that has inherently flawed and do the best version. Does that make sense?
Yep, totally.
Whereas the VGAs have solved those problems, which is to me like that. But we should play that guitar.
I miss the Parker Fly.
I do too. That was a great guitar. Real easy player too. That thing played really well.
Yeah, great guitar. I don't know if it was carbon fiber specifically, but some sort of space age material.
Some acrylic or something.
Yeah, it still had wood. In the still a mahogany body, but they sort of baked the shell onto it. Stainless steel frets.
Yep. Those guys are very forward thinking, man. They what they had.
Out of business.
Yeah.
Gone.
I remember in '96 or '97 being at the NAMM show, and then Fly Booth, which Marshall I think owned Parker at that point.
Yep.
And yeah. So, and I remember thinking how cool they were, but it was not, for everybody. It's a guitar that's clearly not for everybody. Now, my other crush, though, a lot of the really high-end Ernie Ball Music Man stuff, I think is fantastic.
Oh, nice.
For a manufacturer that you can get in most, higher-end, most music stores, that cater to real musicians, not toy stores that sell $200 guitars,
right.
but like real instruments. The Ernie Ball stuff is about as good as you can get for a mass-produced instrument, in my experience. The Lukather model, the JP models, and also the Steve Morse models are fantastic. They're just, what I like about them is they're all quality woods. They're well made. They have good hardware. They don't really, outside of the import line, which is the Sterling one, they really make only high-end hardware.
You know what? In terms of odd shapes, I think the St. Vincent's a cool-looking guitar.
It is, and I think that the Majesty is a cool-looking guitar, too.
Yeah, totally. The John Patricki.
Yeah, but they are different enough, but they're still familiar.
Yep.
They kind of feel like a guitar that's close, has something to do with the Strat, you know what I mean? And
modern classics.
Yeah, exactly. But those guys are very well made guitars. And there's a few companies. One of the company I would throw out there too that I think is really, really, really high end is oh my gosh, and now the name is starting to escape me. I can't believe it. This is what happens when you get over 40.
Let's see here. So who do we have?
Tom Anderson. Tom Anderson.
Well,
guitars.
Tom Anderson's out of business too.
Are they done really? Oh, okay.
I think. You
guys have to find those on eBay.
Don't take that to the bank, but man. So there's one thing that from a gear perspective, man. Remember like all the cool small manufacturers. Like remember Robin guitars, the Robin Machete and the Robin Medley.
Oh yeah.
Dude, I'd love to have a Robin Medley.
Yeah, that was very short-lived. That company. I mean, that seemed like back then, like
a decade or maybe 20 years, and then they're gone. But
but that time period, like 80, let's say 79 to like 92, that was like really when to make hay if you're gonna have a guitar, because that's when guitar ruled the world.
Yeah,
like everything was guitar back in those days. So if you're gonna launch a guitar, it'd be that. You know what I mean? And yeah, those Robin guitars are cool. They have different kind of guitar manufacturers back in the day. And there's a lot of good ones now. Just that everybody and their brother is making guitars now. So you have this guys basically working out of his garage making guitars, and they're great guitars.
And that's a real thing. I've had some students buy guitars that were I can't imagine that the neck was carved from scratch. It's probably Warmoth parts with some dude putting his logo on it.
Yeah, it could be. Definitely could be. I mean, what's your current crushes though on the guitar front?
I need a Caparison Horus.
Caparisons are cool guitars. Yeah.
They're very cool guitars. It's 27 frets on the treble side.
Nice.
With like the slanted fretboard on it.
And the nod to the Night Swan.
Well, yeah.
And also to the Vandenberg too, right?
Sort of Vandenberg. It reminds me most of the Hamer Californian.
Oh, yeah.
Such a cool guitar, right?
That's like it had a slightly undersized body, right?
Yeah, somewhat. The Caparison body is like if you took a Strat body and then like made it kind of offset.
Mm-hmm.
So
which is so cool.
It is so cool and ergonomically comfortable.
Yeah,
right?
The guys. I believe the guys in Evergrey use Caparisons.
Nice.
Yeah.
I know for a while Andy LaRocque was using Caparison, and then he switched to Dean for a while, and now he's with.
Yeah, didn't Michael Romeo used to use Caparison?
I think he still does.
Okay.
Yeah, I think he plays. It's called a Dellinger. Mm-hmm. I think that's what he plays.
Escape Plan.
Yes, right.
Which, by the way, is one of the worst bands I've ever heard in my life. I remember trying to listen to that band because everyone called them prog. I'm like, oh, they're a prog band. I'll check them out. And I don't know what I was listening to. I'm like, what is this?
Does that fall into the technically complex yet unlistenable category?
So much so.
Right.
But it's not even that technically complex either. It's like, it's basically, let's make sure there's no solo sections. Let's make sure there's not any kind of groove of any kind, and let's make sure there's no melody.
Yeah.
But apart from that, it was great.
Yeah, when someone says math metal to me, I just think, man, I hate math.
Yes. I just also, why would I want to listen to that?
Right.
That's the first thing that comes to my mind. I mean, like I said, I write music with odd time signatures, but I always take the Rush or the Yes approach when it comes to that, which is make it so you don't even know it's an odd time signature. It should still groove and have a melody.
Yes.
It shouldn't be just like, let's just write
the Peter Gabriel approach.
Let's not write something angular for the sake of being
Salisbury
angular.
Hill approach.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Or Turn It On Again by Genesis.
Yeah.
I mean, or Them Bones by Alice in Chains.
Yep.
That's not a song that's like, oh, okay, we're going to write something true. I mean, or like Free Will by Rush. There's like all these songs that are just nice, catchy, hooky songs,
Yes.
and it just happens to have a odd time signature.
And I'm sure they would all sound great played on a comparison Horus.
Yes, they would. They would sound amazing that way.
Absolutely.
Is there any like mass-marketed guitars? I mean, I guess comparisons are kind of...
Well, the cool thing about comparison is that so when Jackson first introduced Japanese guitars, they were Jackson's Japanese custom shop.
And then they just kind of broke free and did their own thing.
Yes, exactly.
Almost like Black Star with Marshall, same sort of thing.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, absolutely, man. Yeah, absolutely, same thing.
They kind of broke out from under the man's thumb and started doing their own thing and stuff. Well, it's funny. Speaking of the Vandenberg, I actually heard tell. I saw an interview recently with Adrian Vandenberg where I guess Peavy's going to reissue. The Vandenberg.
Really?
Yeah, apparently.
Yeah,
that's
I
gonna
heard
happen.
that Courtney Cox bought the last, or they gave her the last one. It was like the pink one.
Oh man!
Like they had one in the vault at Peavy.
Oh, that's awesome.
And so, and oddly enough, Courtney Cox plays Comparison.
That makes sense. Yeah,
Yeah, it makes total
Courtney
sense.
Cox's guitarist from the Iron Maidens, if you're not familiar, and she's done some other soul. I think she's some soul stuff too. Probably,
Sure.
yeah. But she was actually partners with Nita Strauss at one point, like as far as like guitar partners. You know? What I mean?
Yeah. They were the Iron Maidens. At least
exactly.
the guitar playing Iron Maidens.
Exactly.
Yes.
Nita Strauss, everyone knows her now as the Demi Lovato guitar player. So.
Oh, that's right. She's
Yep.
not with Alice Cooper anymore.
Yeah, exactly. She was with Alice for like 3-4 years, probably 5
Yeah.
years. And great guitar player. I actually think Nita's.
Yeah.
I'm not surprised that someone who looks like a model and can play like that has got big time gigs dropped at her doorstep, because she's a stunningly beautiful woman who can play her ass off.
And you know what? She's clearly a reliable professional.
Yep.
And
she can really play too.
She
She's
can
not,
really play.
She's not
yeah.
like some. It's not some like thing. Oh, look at this hot chick. Like she can really play.
She can play. She
Yeah.
can show up on time.
Yep,
and,
exactly.
she can meet a deadline.
Yeah, exactly.
So for all you listeners out there who want to be successful, like,
Yes.
there's other aspects besides being an awesome
Showing
guitar
up
player.
is sometimes half the battle.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
exactly. Like don't be hammered.
Yep, exactly.
Show up on time.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, meet
and
deadlines.
reliably show up on time too.
Yep.
Not once every 100 times I show up on time.
Consistency.
1% of the time, he's there every time.
That we call that the Sex Panther approach
Exactly.
to a career, or to not having a career.
But the comparisons are at the top of the list for you on your crushes.
Yeah, it just is. So when I was a kid, the first music store where I worked, we were a Hamer dealer. And oh man, I remember there was in the early 90s when like there were Hamer Centauras out there in the wild that people were selling for like USA made for like $200-$400. Now they've all skyrocketed to $2,000 and $3,000.
I remember in the 90s, like late 90s, when the Slammer brand was part of it. It really went down big time. It was like almost a bad Squire sort of quality.
Yeah, well, there was. I had one of the first. Like my second electric guitar was like a mid-level. It was like a $450 Slammer series,
Which
Centaura.
is not the worst, but
Not at all. It had, like a dinky body, and the output jack pointed up through my strap, and
Cool stuff, yeah.
It was definitely better than my Memphis ST200 that was made of plywood.
there's actually many things that are better than that guitar. I should probably point that out. There's a lot of things that fall in that
Right.
category as far as better than a Memphis, plywood Strat copy.
Yes.
Yeah. But you know what, though? When
including my cat, whose name is Memphis.
There you
Memphis the
go.
cat.
Exactly.
Now
And
he's,
the city
superior.
of Memphis, is also better. But
Yes.
anyway, so that there's a lot of good stuff out there. You know,
Yeah.
I just find that what's
So-
funny. I would say the biggest thing is, and it's going to sound very elitist, sort of, but like you really do get what you pay for. If you want
yeah.
like a great guitar, you're gonna have to put north of $1,000 at least into it. It's just how it is. There's not to say there's not good stuff being made in like that $700 to $1,200 range. There definitely is. But you're going to sacrifice something in that range. There's something that like the hardware's not going to be the best, or the pickups aren't going to be the best, or
I think one factor that maybe we haven't covered so much when we're talking about gear is durability.
That's true. Like,
Right.
is this guitar pickup assembly going to fall apart like 6 months in or something?
If my guitar fall on the concrete, will the neck snap off?
Yeah, that's true.
You know, I've had, you know, I my number one guitar for years and years is a Brian Moore C55. You know, a hand-built custom shop guitar, and yeah, I remember I was switching guitars in the middle of a set once, and I think we were at like the Portuguese American Festival or something that year, and yeah, my cable got wrapped up when I was switching guitars, and it fell face down on the concrete.
Oh, ow! How far?
It was sitting in the stand.
Oh, okay.
And so from sitting in the stand to falling on the concrete.
You weren't up on like a stage riser and it fell down off the
No,
stage.
no. It was like this. It was like a concrete stage.
Because that would happen in slow motion if that ever happened. If you saw it like falling from the top of the stage to like say 6 feet down into the pit, like, yeah, no.
Yeah, well, and you know, in like 1998, that guitar was like maybe $1,200 or $1,300, and it's fine.
Yep.
No problem.
I mean, I have a funny story. My very first ever nice guitar I ever bought was I had this RG 3120 Prestige guitar.
I remember that guitar.
Yeah, you sold it to me.
You're welcome.
But, thank you. You still made my 520 too. But I remember literally did not make it through the day without getting a chip in it. I got home. I was like playing it. I went to go put it against the wall to go walk out and get a cup of coffee. I literally put it against the wall. You know, it's just kind of resting against the wall. Get to the door, and all of a sudden I start hearing this like. And I could hear the headstock scraping the wall as it went down. Ooh. It hit, it bounced, made the most horrific boing kind of sound, and then it tunk, and it hit my chair that was sitting next to it. Pick it up, and in the back there's a little tiny chip about maybe 1/8 of an inch long that got chipped out of the back of that thing. It literally lasted like 3 hours from the store before I put a chip in that thing. I was so heartbroken. I was like, no, I was going to take care of this thing. I wasn't going to let anything happen to it ever. And
you know, you just got to get used to the fact that those of you out there listening, your guitar is going to get dings and dents and chips.
If you use it, it's going to happen.
If you use it, I don't know if you know, in your teaching practice, if you come across the new players who, like, when they pick, their hand hovers over like a crane, like over the bridge. Like they're afraid to make physical contact with it.
Well, I also told them you can't mute with your hands up there, so you got to get your hand over the strings.
Well, that's if they know what muting is yet, but yeah.
Well, no, they're gonna know at that moment. Like, you can't do this because this is why, because you need to mute the strings. Especially playing rock guitar, you can't be hovering over the strings. You know what I mean?
Right. Well, playing any kind of guitar, you gotta,
The worst though is someone with a floating bridge who rests their palm on the bridge, and then you hear this going on the whole time. It's like, okay, that's a floating bridge. You definitely can't rest your palm on the bridge. You can't mute that way either. So what are you doing?
Yes.
I'm sorry. This is just evolving to complaining about students now.
No. It's not a complaint. I want to deliver the message to those listening that you know, your guitar, it looks cool undoubtedly, but don't baby it. You're supposed to play it.
Yep.
You know,
look
like,
at Van Halen's guitar. My God, look
yeah,
what they did that
right.
thing.
The crap out of it. Like, and don't go buy a relic guitar.
That's really dumb. Yeah.
Right. If relicking is where the manufacturer drags it behind a truck on the freeway before they sell it to you, to make it
pre-aged.
Yeah. No. I mean, part of the fun is age the guitar yourself.
Yeah.
Put dings and dents on it yourself.
I saw an interview that blew my mind, actually. I guess Eddie Van Halen was doing an interview back in like probably 88 or something like that. And I guess he was going to go up to a photo shoot with his guitars. And I guess the journalist was there at 5150 when this was happening. And I guess he just walked outside and he took his Frankenstein guitar and he literally just threw it in the back of his truck with no case, just threw it in there and then threw his 5150 guitar in there and he threw another, he like threw 3 guitars, just threw them in the back of his truck in the bed and then drove up to this. I'm like, do you know how much that guitar is worth? That's like the Frankenstein guitar. You just threw like a cord of wood into the back of your truck. It's like, that just shows you what kind of reverence Eddie Van Halen had for his own guitar. He's like, that's his guitar. I'll make another one. Shit, doesn't matter.
Oh, dude, have you seen that picture of Yngwie Malmsteen in his studio with
like 50,000 Strats?
Yeah, just they're all sitting on the floor, just like right next to each other.
Yeah, all like laying on top of each other.
Laying on top of each other.
Yeah, exactly. and no, he's just like, oh, let's go grab one. And he just throws it back. It's like, you know, it's like literally like toothpicks or something. Just whatever, you know. Oh, that's probably the duck he's recorded in Rising Forest. Any of us would just freak out. Like, that's the one he did Rising Forest. He did the marching out with that red Strat. You know, it's like, you'd be like sitting down really geeking out about it. He's like, yeah, whatever. You know.
Or, I mean, look at Steve Vai's Green Meanie.
Yeah. Which, or don't, because he doesn't use it anymore.
Yeah, right.
But I guess it's in his studio or something like that. Or.
Yep, and I know his was. I mean, that was kind of like his Frankenstein.
Yeah, that was
modified
absolutely.
it. Yeah,
and that was sort of the basis for the Gem too. The Gem, they kind of took the Green Meanie and they went and took a lot of those ideas.
That's right, and like the pointier horns and all that stuff. Yeah,
and the playability because it was 24 frets, and it was, you know, he had a custom made because he would tell the story all the time that there was nothing like that he could buy.
Right.
So at that time, those guys did push the manufacturers a lot. Like Eddie and Steve Vai, I mean, everybody really at that time period was looking for something. It almost reminds me a little bit of what stories about Pete Townsend and Hendrix and the guys from the Stones and stuff like that with the manufacturer like Jim Marshall and Leo Fender.
Oh,
and
yeah,
stuff.
amplifiers
say, hey,
like High Watt and how they came around.
We need this. You need to do this.
Yeah.
And then, so I think the manufacturers of left through their artists probably wouldn't have done it themselves. But like because the artists were pushing them forward, they had to come up with a new way to do things. And I think the guitars were the same sort of thing. And we've talked about this before, so we're not necessarily go through it. But the high water mark for guitar design was like 1991. Like 90, 91, around there. They pretty much had perfected the guitar.
Maybe even a little earlier, but yeah.
You know what I mean? And they really should have just stopped at that point because it was perfect. They didn't need anything else. You know what I mean? It's
so that would have been about the time that I was selling Hamers, and at that time, like Hamer is known for being sort of like was known. I mean, I guess there's a version of Hamer that's out there now.
Is there actually a version of Hamer?
I think they resurrected it.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know who the parent company was. For the longest time, it was Kaman.
Oh, geez.
That was distributing
with Ovation, and everybody had that.
Yeah, so Kaman used to be Ovation, Takamine, and then for solid body electrics, it was Hamer.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember seeing like Vernon Reed play Hamers and Steve
Gary
Stevens.
Hoey.
Yeah, Gary Hoey. Steve Stevens had a signature model.
Yep.
God, I think the guys in Jethro Tull played Hamer.
Yeah, there's actually a lot of guys back in like 89, 88.
Yeah, totally.
And those were good guitars too. I mean, they were.
Oh, dude, when and then they had that cool, there was that cool little bevel on the headstock, right? Yep. I thought that was awesome. Like the boomerang inlays, such cool stuff. So they had this guitar, this model called the Californian.
Yeah.
That had the slanted fretboard, 27 frets on the treble side, 2 humbuckers, but one of them was a mini humbucker in the neck position at a slant.
Yeah.
And
to match the guitar, right?
Correct. Yeah, to match the end of the fretboard. And that's what Gibson makes now.
Yeah.
And like their own kind of take on that
Take the good
thing.
stuff and just leave it at that, yeah.
Yeah, I very much want one for all of those. It's cool on its own, but it also evokes memories. And if you try to buy a USA-made Californian on Reverb or something, I mean, you're going to shell out $5,000 or $6,000.
Yeah.
It's insane.
You know, it's funny that you saying that reminds me of another guitar I definitely need to pick up, and this is something that, it's not a guitar I would ever use live or in the studio necessarily, but I would probably teach with it. There's an EVH guitar. It's basically the black stripe guitar that's got a star shape. It's,
cool.
It's from like, I want to say Diver Down era, that kind of thing, maybe 1984. It's very 1980s, and I look at that thing and it just makes me happy. It's got the 3 on each side headstock, and it's like...
Okay, so I'd want that guitar just in red so that I could...
it's black and white, though. It's so cool, dude. It's such a
But if it were red, then it could be like the Akira Takasaki.
Well, they have the Shark, the Shark guitar, which is the one from the cover of Women and Children First.
Okay, so now wasn't the Shark legendarily a crappy sounding guitar?
Well, it wasn't initially, because he actually recorded like the first record like with that one and the Frankie, those bars. So anything that didn't have whammy bar was the Shark, and that's basically a Carina Explorer copy, basically is what it was. And he cut a big chunk out of the back of it to make it look cool. And when you cut the chunk out of the back, it just took all the tone away. That's where all the resonance was happening. So it was still cool looking, but it wasn't going to sound good in the end.
Yeah, well, see, I didn't think it became the Shark until he cut the chunk out.
Yeah, that's when it became the Shark guitar. But before that, it was the same guitar.
So Eddie jumped the Shark.
He jumped the Shark at that point. Although it looks super cool. And
it does.
It's one of those things like, okay, that's a cool looking guitar, but tone matters. And that's why he stopped. I won't play this anymore. It sounds like crap.
Yeah.
But he did like a lot of the first record with that guitar. But that's before he cut the stuff out, though.
Right. When it was still just a Baby Shark.
Yeah, exactly.
Baby
I'm the one
Shark.
with kids. How do you know about Baby Shark? Come on.
I do have a niece and a nephew.
Oh, there you go.
And so, I'm up to speed on the Baby Shark stuff.
Thank you for listening to the Rock Guitar Confidential podcast with Ryan and Scott. Hope you're crushing on those guitars and getting ready to learn some things about recording. Anyway, please make sure to rate and subscribe to our podcast and follow us on all of our socials. Get back to the show. All right, so moving forward in our conversation, one thing I want to talk about, this is something that, we both kind of had people asking about recently, which is like how to get into recording and what kind of software, what you need. And the answer is going to be different for everybody. It really depends on what you do. It could be as simple as just having a very, very inexpensive interface and just having GarageBand on like a laptop. You could do that. If you want to do like pro demos, though, or like really good sounding demos, or if you want to record a record, the one thing I would say is the DAW doesn't matter as much as long as you know how to use it. So whether you're using like Nuendo or Cubase or Pro Tools or Studio One or whatever it might be, they're all fun. Every one of those is going to do a lot of the same stuff. It's going to be compatible with most of the plugins. There's really almost no specific difference between how they function, but you're going to need so much RAM. So much more than you need, and then so much processing power. What do you think? You actually are more up to date on this than I am.
Well, and I still really don't know what I'm talking about when it comes to recording. But so from my own personal experience, we recorded our album that's about to be released this fall, the Ex Aegis debut album.
Yep.
It got a Windows machine. It's an Intel Core i9 processor, 32 gigabytes of RAM.
Yep. Which even that can be maxed out pretty quick.
Yeah, just so I've found that some amp sims really processor hungry.
Yeah.
So that would be the one thing operationally that I've learned going along. And then the other thing I've learned is that I don't know how to mix. And
mixing is very challenging. Yes.
Yeah, and then there's that.
It's
whole
a different skill set
process.
than being a musician too. It's like so different. It has nothing to do with it.
So different. Well, plus I feel like even if I did know how to mix, I wouldn't know how to be objective about my own music.
You can't hear it right if it's your stuff you wrote at all. You kind of have this idealized, almost platonic version in your head of what the perfect version of that would be. But how to realize that is very difficult to do.
Yeah, and then your ears get used to the way it sounded on your crappy
sounds
mix.
wrong
and then,
when you hear it.
So just really interesting stuff. So basically, with a powerful enough computer, you can get your takes.
Yep. And you can interface that is probably need to be like maybe up to 4 or 5 inputs at once if possible. If you can do that, you know what I mean.
I'm really happy with the we've been using a Yamaha Steinberg RT4. And it's got, I guess, these like Neve designed transformers or whatever. For anyone who doesn't know, Rupert Neve is the man who designed all those consoles that all the great classic albums were recorded on.
Yeah. Also, he's got the name Rupert, was inherently delightful.
Yes, right.
Did you bring that console with all those nice plugins and all those nice preamps?
Right, it reminds me of the janitor when I was at Hufflepuff University.
Are you named for the teddy bear on Family Guy?
Mrs. McGonagall's Pip, and all that.
God save the king. God save the king.
Rubbish, right? So, man, that just about made me lose my train of thought there. So,
Rupert Neve, very good.
The Rupert Neve stuff. So, you pretty much just need to, that interface. I don't know if the transformers are making things sound, that much sweeter or not, but I do know that it's built really well.
Yep.
Right, kind of like with guitars. If you invest a little bit more,
Yep.
If you invest a little bit more and it's not built out of cheap plastic, then it's going to last a long time.
And I think how much you need, like how powerful a machine, how much you need for an interface, how many inputs you need, what kind of preamps do you need, is really all depending on what you're trying to do. If you're just trying to get your ideas down, then it almost just whatever the cheapest interface you can in GarageBand is probably fine.
I'd say the two big motivators for me when upgrading a piece of gear, one was latency. Right, so when we're recording guitars direct into a computer, you want it to feel as if you're playing out of an amplifier.
Yes, like okay, I'm gonna try and here because it's gonna show up on the recording here, so I gotta like almost play against an imaginary beat.
Yeah, and I just don't want to do that.
Nope.
So that, and then that's all a CPU thing. That was what was interesting to me. I thought it was just a RAM thing, but no, you have to have a badass CPU in your computer.
Yeah.
Whatever that may be. Now, we'd probably have to get a special guest on here to talk about the Apple versus Windows debate and whether that matters anymore.
I don't know that it does. I feel like the Apple. I mean, it's not that both don't make awesome machines; they both do. I just think really that in my experience, the PC way is just a less expensive way to go.
Yeah.
And you can get something out almost exactly the same for like maybe a third of the money if you do it that way. So that again, if money's not an object, then go for the Mac. That's totally fine. I wouldn't judge anyone for it. I think it's just a personal taste thing at that point,
Yeah, I'd say my attitude about it is the same as my attitude about just gear in general, and that's, whatever can remove a barrier between me and playing, I want that thing.
Yeah, I don't want to think about it. I want to just record it.
Yeah, I want to go back to being a guitar player. I don't want to be an engineer. I don't want to.
Exactly. It's so funny. I find myself feeling that way all the time now. It's like, I didn't really want to be an engineer or someone who has to cut up stuff or be a webmaster or be a video editor. Right. I didn't really want to do any of that. I just wanted to play guitar really at the end of the day. But now the way the music world works in 2022, you have to have like 10 different hats that you have to put on. You know what I mean?
Which isn't to say that, you and I are both down to learn new things.
Of course, yeah.
But at the end of the day, I just want to just put me in the in the live room or behind the board, and like I just want to play my part.
Yep. and improvise or whatever it's going to be and make a great guitar part happen.
Yeah, so anything that removes barriers between me and making music, that's what I want.
But as far as like getting in the door with recording, you just need a good, strong computer with a lot of RAM, powerful CPU, good amount of memory as far as the hard drive, and then a good, decent interface that, honestly, you're going to need to get something that's not the cheapest, but not the most expensive, depending on what you want to do. And,
you know, it was also, we grew up with like the Tascam Porta Studio.
Yep. Oh yeah. Fostex.
Tascam, Fostex, all that. And then these days, I've got one of those Zoom R24 recorders. Actually, before that, I had the 8-track version. And it's a little self-contained thing. You put an SD card in it.
Yep.
It's got the faders.
It's still
and
digital
tracks.
recording too. It's just
yeah, still
looks
digital
like an
recording.
old Porta Studio. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's got a built-in drum machine too. Like that sounds like drums.
Yep.
So for anyone out there, the investment's like maybe $300 to start. That is a great place just to kind of get going if you just need to document your ideas.
Yeah, if you already have a laptop or a PC or a Mac that you like, it's relatively powerful with the RAM and the processor, all you really need to do is go pick up whatever the DAW is, whether it be Pro Tools or Cubase, whatever it might be, get a decent interface, and you're off and running.
Get a PreSonus audio box for $100. Comes with the software.
Most of the less entry-level versions of those pieces of software will have a lot of plugins available just right with the software, like different compressors, different things like that, different EQ settings you can put on them, which will help. If you want something very specific, like a guitar, like let's say a DSP archetype, then you just go buy that particular plugin, plug it into your DAW, and you just record directly with that.
And for those who are wondering what a plugin is,
yeah, plugins are just basically effects that you can bring in through DAW. DAW is short for Digital Audio Workstation. It's basically a recording software, and it'll pop up, and you can actually use that suite for your sounds. And there's similar plugins for things like compressors and EQs. So you can do the same sort of thing.
Yeah, it's like virtual versions of all the gear that you would have in a studio.
That's like a very, very small percentage of the price of what it would cost for the real thing.
Yeah, fractions.
Yeah, exactly. So pennies on the dollar, basically.
Yeah, so we recorded most, if not all, of our solos using the Neural DSP Soldano suite.
Yep.
Right,
which is modeled after the SLO. Yeah.
Yeah. So if we went out to go get an SLO 100, how many thousands of dollars would that be?
Probably looking at least $6,000.
Yeah, these days,
just for the head.
Yeah, just for the head, right? No speaker cabinet. That doesn't say anything about miking it up. I think I got my plug-in for $120.
Yep, exactly. That's what we're talking about. You can get like that sound for like $100 if you have a good DAW. But that being said, it's almost like the old problem of more choices, more problems in a way, because like then you have so many plugins available to you. You have so many tones available to you. Like, how do you decide? You almost feel paralyzed because there's so many different places you could go.
Well, and that's where I think it's important to have a clear philosophy about and a clear attitude about gear.
Yeah. Like what you're looking for, like know where you want to go.
Right.
Yeah.
Even throughout the whole experience of at least learning how to create quality recording, meaning get like good quality takes, right? I'm not talking about a mixed and mastered and produced thing.
Yeah.
But just get takes that are good enough to send to
someone to get mixed and mastered.
Yeah, to someone to get mixed and mastered and produced, right? Yeah. That's another topic we should cover.
But we're going to cover that in a second. Go ahead and finish.
Yeah, that's right. But my personal philosophy has never changed. Yeah. I want a guitar and I want to plug it straight into an amp. And that's it, right? I want a clean channel, and then I want a dirty channel, and I want to be able to roll my volume back a little bit for the rhythms.
Yeah.
And that's just, and so when I'm seeking out plugins or when I'm seeking amp simulators, that's what I want. I just want it to make it sound like I'm plugging my guitar into my amp.
Just like the real world, basically.
I just want to get back to being a guitar player as fast as I can.
Now, for me, I would definitely want to have like a delay in there somewhere. I'd want to have some phaser and some flanger in there somewhere. Maybe wah. I'm not like Ryan. I can't go straight into the guitar. I mean, I can, but it's almost like saying, well, yeah, I could eat the pasta without any sauce, but I kind of want the sauce too. You know what I mean? It's like, that's kind of like the way I look at it. I want the whole thing, man. I want the Parmesan. I want the garlic olive oil.
Oh, man, you're making me hungry.
But you know what I'm saying, though.
Okay, but if it's not pasta, if it's a steak, then I just want
I'm
a little
vegetarian, though, so that doesn't mean.
Okay. So if it's a tofu steak, then
I really want the marinade. Yeah. I want the marinade, and I want like the sea salt, and I want.
Okay, so now are you
grains of paradise?
Are you pescatarian at least?
No, I am not.
No fish.
Nothing with a fish or nothing with a face or a mother.
Oh man, dude, you're making this analogy really difficult.
Yes, well that's what I mean. So that's why I went the pasta route, because that makes.
I know. Yeah, you kind of got me on that.
I had like
one.
if I have a bag of like say like some fettuccine. Sure, maybe some olive oil and some salt, pepper. Totally fine. There's nothing wrong with that.
Okay, so
but I'd rather have like shredded basil chiffonade with some roasted pine nuts and some Parmesan cheese, and you know what I mean. That would be with garlic oil instead of standard. You know what? Okay, this is devolving.
Okay,
into
so
a food podcast,
so if I'm putting brie on a cracker. Because I'm drinking wine and tasting, right?
That actually sounds. It's not an adult film.
Yes. If I'm tasting cheese, then I cracker that is pretty much flavorless, so it doesn't get in the way of the flavor of the cheese.
I gotcha.
I'm not going to sprinkle seasonings on the cheese. I just want the cheese on its own.
I get you.
So there's my cheese philosophy.
I will say that's legit food and in guitar. But some people like myself would.
For those of you who eat steak, I was going to say you just want a little salt and pepper on your steak, a bunch of A1 sauce.
Oh yeah.
That was the analogy I was going to roll with. But Scott, you keep me on my toes.
All right.
Thank you.
But no, I think there's not any wrong way to go. It's all about choices at the end of the day. What do you like to have? You know what I mean? And I think that makes the world interesting. You know what I mean? So I at least need like a delay on there somewhere. And I do like phaser sometimes on certain parts, and I do like a wah-wah. So those are things I would really miss if they weren't there.
Yeah, and if I'm honest, then, to post-production, then the producer is putting some delay and reverb. I'm not anti-delay or reverb, folks.
I'm actually not as big a fan of reverb as I am delay. I think delay is a lot more useful, and then reverb. Reverb, to me, I feel like muddies things, whereas I think delay it gives you the ambience, but it's cleaner. That makes sense.
I know that in a live setting, the room you're in is going to have natural reverb anyway, it's better to dial your amp pretty dry.
I've heard good reverbs that sound great, but most reverbs I've heard aren't that. Most of them they just sound like everything got fuzzy all of a sudden, and now I can't hear anything. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Now that brings us to the topic of mixing and producing and what the difference is. And to me, like when we were recording, I did a little bit of producing, and you did some producing, and our mixing engineers actually done some producing as well. But producing to me is a creative process. You're sort of making decisions about what's valuable in the song, what's not, what needs to be there, what doesn't need to be there.
Maybe adding something.
What you can add, exactly. What the approach, for like the vocalist or the solo should be in terms of the style or the attitude. That's producing. And mixing is really just purely a mechanical thing. Like you're putting levels, EQing things. That's a different animal, and it can be both. You can be doing creative things and do the mixing thing at the same time. It could be mixing is just a purely mechanical thing, or it could be the producing is just purely a creative thing and has nothing to do with the technical side. I think it could go any which way. I do know enough about at least myself to know that I'm a terrible mixing. I'm not a good mixer. I'm not a mixing artist.
No, me neither.
And I have a pretty good, to sound too self-congratulatory, but I have a pretty good idea of what should be or shouldn't be in a piece of music. So the producing side I feel more comfortable with, but the mixing side, it's just there's so much to it. You know what I mean?
I'm much better in the creative realm.
Yep.
Right, like my imagination doesn't fail me.
Yeah, and I think sometimes
the technical skill for mixing, I don't have it.
I think also it's just you have to be a step away removed from what the music is to be good at mixing. You have to not have your heart attached to a certain part.
That's right.
You can't have this really needs to be the thing. You got to just listen to it for what it is without any kind of emotional
which isn't the same thing as I want to hear more of that instrument in this song. I think that's I want that instrument to be have more high mids or to stick to stand out a little bit more. I think there's a distinction that should be made.
But that's something that's always better by someone who's not responsible for that part in the first place. I think that someone who doesn't have a horse in the race is a much better mixer than someone who does, if that makes sense. Or if you fooled yourself into hearing it a certain way and it sounds wrong any other way than that.
Or if you just got used to it, because everyone's going to listen back to their recording sessions.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's true, and it's so hard to be objective about your own stuff. And I think that if you're a mixer, you need to be objective about what you're hearing and not feel attached to something. And the producer, to a degree, has to do the same thing. They got to be not too precious about this part needs to be there. This part has to be in the song. It's maybe this will make the song better. You know what I mean?
I had I was again hanging out with my good friend Rich. We're gonna have to have Rich on the show sometime.
At some point,
and I was sharing a couple different mixes of the same song with him, and he just pointed out. So one mix was, lots of bass and lead vocals, and everything else was very much not as prominent.
And secondary, yeah.
And and then the other mix, you could hear all of the elements pretty obviously. And he said, about the first mix, like neither mix was bad, but one mix tells the listener what to listen to.
Yeah, and the other one's just
the other mix doesn't tell the listener what to focus on.
Yeah.
And so I want the mix that doesn't tell the listener.
And that's the thing. I think you have to recognize that answers me different for everybody. As far as what they want the listener to do. I think I agree with you 100%. I think you need to let the listener make up their own minds what's important to listen to. You know? And just trust that, and then hope that the song you wrote has enough interesting parts and interesting things that people are going to listen to different things throughout the song. You know what I mean? And
well, whether it's music or whether it's like if we're talking film, I like movies that I can go back and watch over and over and over and peel the layers back on and discover something new.
Yeah,
I want to make music that's like that.
Yeah, it's not meant to be like a quick flash in the pan sort of thing where like it's really hitting you over the head with what it's trying to be.
Right.
I think it's just like, okay, this is a cool thing. And if you listen to any classic record, they're always like that. I mean, almost any classic album you go back to, it's like, wow, okay, like take maybe Screaming for Vengeance by Judas Priest.
Dude, I've been teaching that lately, dude. This is one of the songs that is cycled around. I've got a bunch of students doing in Electric Eye.
Well, I mean, that whole album though, there's like a lot of stuff on that album that you can really dig into. There's a lot of elements to it. You know what I mean? It's very one dimensional. And I think Fair Warning from Van Halen's like that. I think Diary of a Madman by Ozzy Osbourne's like that.
Oh God, yeah.
It's like where you can really, there's stuff that presents itself as being more straightforward, but then there's like this more subtle stuff. I think Empire by Queensryche is like that. Yeah. Where it's like all this different of things that are going on. You know what I mean?
Dude, I've got to give a shout out to my cousin's kid, Emery, who takes lessons with me on Sundays. I told her to listen to Diary of a Madman, and she totally did. She listened to the whole thing. On the way back from a family camping trip, she listened to No Rest for the Wicked all the way through.
Oh, nice.
Yep, and now, we just finished going over the solo for Crazy Train.
Nice.
So I'm proud to announce to you and all of our listener...
Thank you, listener.
That I am so stoked that I am related to someone who can play Ozzy Osbourne
that
stuff.
Is so
who can
cool.
play Randy Rhoads. I finally now have a relative
who can play Randy
that
Rhoads.
Can play some Randy Rhoads stuff.
Well, that's something that's so great, man, is that when you hear some 10, 12-year-old kid playing like a Randy solo or a riff, it's like, oh, and this is so cool. That,
well, and dude, she's 15.
Yeah.
So she could totally be distracted by all kinds of other
stuff.
shit. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's really cool. I'm so super happy that someone I'm related to
is going the right path in life.
Yeah, that's right. Making the right choices.
But as far as finding someone who makes your stuff, I think number one, it's got to be someone who's not in your band. It can't be your producer. It can't be your manager. It can't be your friend. It's got to be someone you can be friendly with, but you got to they got to be far enough removed to be able to look at what's going on objectively. Someone who's willing to be honest with you and say, boy, this part sucks ass, or boy, this sounds terrible. We need to change all this. And you got to be, as an artist, it's very difficult to open yourself up and say, okay, criticize my stuff, tell me what's good and what's bad. And it's hard to be honest about with yourself. But you need someone who's willing to be honest with you.
I think that's why you and I are good songwriting partners, right? I mean, it's the nature of collaboration that you're going to have to...
Well, mutual respect has to be there, you know what I mean? You have to, a person's not going to do this to be an asshole. This person's doing this to be straight up and say this is what needs to be done to make the whole thing better. Whether you're writing songs or whether they're mixing your stuff, it's all the same sort of perspective. You know what I mean? That we're all in the team together. We're all trying to make this a better thing. And then the challenge there also can become budget, and it depends on who the heck you can what you can afford to pay them. If you have a label, can they front you the money? Because that's what's so funny. What makes a record label nowadays could just be like an address, basically. You know what I mean? And it's not really anything other than they'll put their name on the record, and maybe they have the same distribution channels that you by yourself would have. But they are a record label, in name only, basically. And
it's almost, if you just go to the bank and take out a loan, you may as well just do that.
Yeah.
And then use that money to make the album.
And then you get to keep all the money on the way back, as opposed to them taking the percentage. But yeah, I mean, especially in the rock and metal world, there's just so little money to go around. It's ludicrous to do that. So you got to keep the budgets down. I think also you got to just judge what is it that you're trying to accomplish with this recording too. What is the point of what you're doing? Is it because I'm trying to have a big money payday, or is it I just want to put a great piece of art out, and how much am I willing to pay to make that happen? That answer's gonna be different for everybody. So it's not like there's a right or wrong.
Man, maybe it's just the idealist in me, but I think for guys like us, guitar players like us, musicians like us, like you can't think about whether it's going to be a big hit of any kind, right? Like I can.
Well, what's a hit anymore? Anyway?
Well, right. Like the only way the music's going to be any good is if we like it.
Yeah, exactly.
If that makes sense.
What makes it a hit too is like a hit because they got a viral video thing. It's a TikTok video went viral. Is that a hit now?
Yeah.
You know what I mean, it's like. I mean, I kind of not sound too artistic. I would like to aim and aspire for more than that. It's like something that people are going to really grab a hold of and want to listen to, and not be like some flash in the pan thing. That's the only thing that is a hit anymore, really.
Yeah.
Some kind of weird flash in the pan.
Dude, I just love the notion that someone living in some other country is going to hear us play.
Yep.
And then one person's going to really dig it.
And
that we'll never meet.
One person in each country. So by the end of it, we have at least 180 people in the world who like what we're doing. That's the goal right there. So anyway, but as far as like finding someone to mix that, now producing, that's, I think an artist might do an okay job if they have at least some collaborators, either their bandmates or they've maybe someone that they trust. You can probably produce a record, but I think doing the engineering and the mixing is something that you need someone who's not in that circle to do. That's something I would say.
Yep, and I'm definitely going to cast a vote towards get a producer.
If you can.
If you know someone who can do it, or if you can find somebody who can produce that's in line with your interests and vibe.
And listen to that person too.
Huge.
That's so hard as an artist to like listen to someone's criticisms or saying like, hey, this is okay, but if you did this, it'd be much better. And
or just to accept their ideas that you're not familiar with yet.
Yeah, it's true. And it's not precious about your own ideas too. Like, no, this is the right idea. This is all that's ever been in this spot. No one's going to take it from me. And I think you'd be humble enough to recognize that you don't have all the answers. And I think at the end of the day, if you keep the attitude, and what the old saying was, it like it's amazing what you can accomplish when no one cares about who gets the credit.
Oh,
What
absolutely.
I mean? I think just is the end product stronger, and that's going to be better for everybody if that is.
Or success has 1,000 fathers and failure is an orphan.
Yeah, exactly right. Exactly.
Yeah, that's a great Kennedy quote.
That must be why, like when there's like a hit like EDM song, there's like 25 producers on a song that has literally no instruments.
Yeah,
I'm always like,
well, it probably all samples too. So
those guys don't get producer credits. That either those they consider them all songwriters. Like really, it took 20 people to produce this. Okay.
I'll tell you one thing that I always thought was really cool. So when Henry Rollins formed Rollins Band in the early 90s, and that's a band that, man, I love that band. Henry
I'm not
Rollins,
familiar with them, I'll be honest with you.
Henry Rollins isn't really a singer, but like it's like hardcore music, but it's too good to be punk. Right, like the Chris Haskett. There's a guitar player that I think is like maybe overlooked from the '90s era.
I gotta tell you, I don't know anything about Rollins Band, so
dude, there's killer bass players.
The '90s, I will say, the '90s were known for good rhythm sections, good bass players and drummers.
Oh, the rhythm section: Sim Kane and Sean Weiss on End of Silence, and then Sim Kane and Melvin Gibbs on Wait. Wait is the album that Liar came from. Right, so that rhythm section was just dope. But Chris Haskett, the guitar player, was playing some killer stuff. And Henry Rollins and his neck muscles were like spitting pros. It was a really cool band. And I mean, everybody knows who Henry Rollins is. Dude, I've seen him do spoken word a number of times. Henry Rollins is just a cool artist.
I think that's probably how you would describe himself too.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Oh, I mean, he's humble too. I don't know if he'd even be comfortable saying that he thinks he's cool.
Yeah,
but
as long as he doesn't refer to his body as his instrument, I think he's okay.
Yeah, So Henry Rollins is a dude who's worth listening to. But the thing that I really thought was cool, like every Rollins Band album, on the liner notes, it gave you the names of all the members and who did what. But they also included their producer Theo Van Rock.
Great name.
And totally. And he was also in every band film. They made the producer a member of the band.
Oh, that's cool.
I thought that was always so cool.
That can work out negatively too. Metallica did with Bob Rock too.
That definitely worked out poorly. Yeah. And that's not to say that I don't like other stuff. Bob
Bob Rock's a great producer.
Bob Rock's a great producer.
That's an example of being not far enough removed.
Just not for Metallica.
Yeah, he would be okay with Metallica if he wasn't like in the band too. If he was just like a dude who went away, did something for a year, and then came back and hang out with the band for like 6 months, and he'd be better off in that situation, I think.
I think maybe another good example would be Def Leppard and Mutt Lange. Yeah. I mean, he was pretty much a member of Def Leppard all that time.
Yep.
Yeah.
Starting with High and Dry all the way through Journalize, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. If anyone's listening, I didn't Def Leppard, they re-recorded area. There was like copyrights dude, it's not the same
Of course
as the
it's
original
not.
recording.
Of
I
course
don't
it's
even
not.
know. I mean, why would you just go to?
Well, dude, famously, Ozzy Osbourne and Sharon
Yeah.
replaced Lee Kerslake and Bob Daisley
Daisley.
on the two classic, on Blizzard and Diary. They put Robert Trujillo and Mike Borden on that.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
It wasn't even Tommy Aldridge and I mean, I like
this
Mike
happened
Borden.
in the 90s. Like in the 90s, they went and they took out Lee Kerslake and Bob Daisley parts and replaced them with Robert Trujillo on bass and Mike Borden. And they kept Randy and Ozzy parts, but then like there was such a hue and cry about this is not the classic song.
Yeah.
Because they didn't want to pay those guys the performance royalties. Is basically what it comes down
God, that
to.
is so shitty.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm aware of. I didn't know it was in the 90s or on, but
It might have been
like in the
2000s. Might have been
2000s. Yeah, I
2000s,
think that
yeah.
sounds about more correct.
Later, it wasn't in the 80s. This is like so we're already well established classics at that point.
Sharon.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
pretty gross.
Usually gross,
Yeah.
man. They should have at least got Tommy Aldrich to do it, and I like Mike Borden.
I always wonder with that is like how much money is enough, man. Like how much more ducats do you
right.
need to get? At the end, is it just like?
Yeah, would it be so bad just to cut Jake Ely a check?
Yeah, I don't get it. It's like
I
how
don't
much
get it
money
at
do
all.
you need? Unless you like just are living on the edge of what you could possibly afford and you need every dollar. Maybe they are.
I
But
don't
it's
know
like,
that Ozzy and Sharon are about to start a new reality show once they get back to England.
maybe there's a reason why they're doing that. Maybe they're broke. Maybe maybe they're living
Yeah.
so far at the very edge of their means they need every dollar. It's like
I mean, I
we're
guess
not
that's
talking
possible.
about tens of millions to pay off Bob Daisley, probably a couple million.
God damn,
You know?
man. How easy would it be just to downsize a little bit to like maybe like a 30-room mansion instead of like a fancy?
Here's the thing, though.
Yeah.
You could make a huge argument that if it had not been for Bob Daisley, then he wouldn't have a career.
No, not
You know
at
what I
all.
mean?
Because
Bob-
he wrote
all
those
lyrics.
songs. Yeah. Yep.
And helped write the song.
Yep. Without his input, we wouldn't have Blizzard of Oz. We wouldn't have the Blizzard as we know it.
We wouldn't have any of the great Ozzy albums. We
Nope.
wouldn't have Blizzard all the way through No More Tears. Bob Daisley wrote all the lyrics to the songs from Blizzard through all the way through No More Tears.
I didn't know he was involved that long.
He actually played bass and wrote the lyrics to No More Tears.
That's
And the only thing they
cool.
brought in Lemmy to do with lyrics on a couple of songs.
Oh yeah, on Hellraiser. Yeah.
And then I think 2 or 3 other ones too. But I mean, it was basically Bob Daisley was in the band off and on, but they wouldn't. Bob Daisley never played bass on any of the records.
Yeah.
The reason
yeah,
why
yeah.
is because they didn't want to pay him the performance royalties for playing bass.
God.
So they'd bring him in, they'd pay him for his time to like write songs,
And
and
then
they'd give
have
him
Phil Susan do the sessions
or whoever
something.
was the
yeah.
bass player at the time. You know what I mean? Geezer Butler for No More Tears, and a few other people. It's. I don't know if she just learned that from her dad. If that's why.
Yeah,
she
Don
just-
Arden,
Yeah,
yeah.
like is that just something that like you just don't give an inch or something? Like I'm like, was it so bad? Like once you have so much money, you can't like have some good vibes with people who have helped you have your career.
Right.
It doesn't make sense to me. And it's like,
And
well,
I mean, Sharon's not going to be around much longer.
nope. And then Jake. I mean, dude, when Randy died, that could have been game over for Ozzy. Then they
Yeah.
found Jake, and Jake freaking did "Bark at the Moon," and then boom, there's another giant hit song that he can put his staff
Yeah,
on.
Bark
you
of
know?
the Moon's so legendary.
Yeah, and it's like, okay, but we're not going to pay. Jake did not. He got paid a flat fee for that.
God.
Do you know how many millions of dollars that he could have gotten had he been like
Yeah.
just in the performance and songwriting royalties for that? I mean, it's the fact
so-
that he's even willing to entertain the idea of going back and playing with those guys is
Yeah.
amazing to me. You know what I mean?
So for those of you out there considering getting that, that digital 8-track or that PreSonus, interface, this is where it can all lead.
Yep,
Make
exactly.
sure you don't accept a flat fee.
Most likely, it's going to lead to you making some very, very valuable art that you love and appreciate, and will always do so.
That's
And
what matters.
And if you're very fortunate, we'll have a small group of people who really appreciate it as well, and you can say, "Hey, that's success right there." At that point, I think that the idea of big money paydays is pretty much an over thing for the music industry
Yeah.
these days. But unless you already made it before like 1992, if you made it before
Yep.
1992, you could probably still play big places and make a good money touring. But yeah, the whole idea of this is going to be a hit record and I'm going to make millions off this is just don't even entertain that walking in the door.
But I'd say at the end of it, man, just the joy of a creative pursuit, right?
Look at this thing that you just did. Look at
Yeah,
this
I
thing
mean,
you
think
did.
about
Yeah.
how many other things you could do with your time. Like how many groups are just based on, hey, we all own this same thing.
Yeah,
Whatever it is,
Yeah.
right?
in life, just in general. I mean, yeah.
Maybe like you own comic books or something, which is fine. I think that's great, right? But I mean, how much cooler is it when you make a thing and
Yeah.
then you like hang out with other people that make things?
Yeah, I think that you can't be so results oriented. It's more about the process and why you did the thing you did, and then the results are going to do what they're going to do. And there's no control. You can make the greatest thing in the world, and it can flop, and you can make something that's terrible, and it can be successful. It's really you can't judge success or failure as whether it's a worthwhile endeavor.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of, okay, did you do what you wanted to do? and did it come out the way you hoped it did? And then you've been successful.
Like, are you going to want to listen to your own song 5 now and think that's cool?
And be proud of it. You know what
I mean, like all the reasons people, love music and talk about the cliches, like it's the soundtrack of your life. Well, how much cooler would that be if it was the song that you wrote and performed and created, and then you get to listen back to it?
Or what if you can be that for someone else? You know what I mean? Like,
dude.
You can write something and someone else's, that's their sound life. You know what I mean? That is what art is all about, really. I think is to be able to impact people that you know or don't know, and make something that's going to last and outlive you.
That's right. Something's going to outlast you. Yeah.
And that you got to make sure you can stand by it. You know what I mean? And I don't know. I think you can always kind of tell when someone's sort of just doing it for the paycheck, and you can always tell when they're not. You know what I mean? And we all know what those records are. You know.
Well, and I mean, how many people in the general public know someone who does that for the paycheck? Probably not many. So
not many,
I mean, just think about like who, where you are right now, and all of your friends and your family and people you care about, and being able to say, hey, here's this thing I made.
Yep.
That's awesome stuff.
And then if you're lucky, they actually like the kind of music you make. And if you're unlucky, they don't like the kind of music you make, and they think everything you do is terrible.
And then you can just tease them about being born with bad taste.
Yes, exactly.
And then offer to help your friends.
Go back
and
and listen to the Toby Keith record. Fine.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. I've got a number of friends and family, especially family, who it's not their fault. They suffer from bad taste.
Yep.
And I'm here to help.
Yep. It affects
here to help.
Over 75% of people over the age of 50 is or like under the age of 20. I don't know which one it is.
We'll consult with our pollsters.
Yes, exactly. And the medical community will have a few peer-reviewed studies drawn up on this, and we'll get back to you guys in the future. Speaking of that, that's going to do it for this episode of Rock Guitar Confidential with Ryan and Scott. Thank you so much for listening to us.
We'll have the socials up soon. Be looking out for that Ex Aegis debut album. And thanks for listening.
Fall 2022, guys. All right, thanks so much.
Peace.